welcome back. This video is gonna be a fun one because we're doing a devlog and I'm doing something a little bit crazy. I've tried to describe in the title as clearly as possible. It might sound a little bit like clickbait, but I promise it's not. I am deleting the player in my game. Now, I'm going to talk about the reasoning behind this decision a little bit more as we go, but the short version is that I should have done this a long time ago. I had this vision in mind when I started my game that was very different than what it has become through, months and years of refining that vision, of trimming scope. And there was one little piece that got left and expanded upon through all these cuts that really shouldn't have been there. So when I first came up with my game idea, which you'll know if you've been watching these devlogs for a while, is that it was a multiplayer game from the start. And there was this idea that you would do co-op with other players and you would be able to unlock these fun visual things and select which ones you want to display so that other people could see them. And it was a fun communal idea, and then I cut multiplayer, but I kept the player avatar, I kept the vanity unlocks, I kept, a lot of stuff that's a little bit reminiscent of TFT, a little bit this new idea that I had come up with, and it just doesn't make sense anymore. And I'm gonna probably talk a lot in this video about sunk cost fallacy because this hit me really hard. Because I've spent probably over 100 hours easy working on features related to player movement, player armor equipping for the vanity items, working on the vanity items themselves, working on the jiggle bones that I was so proud of, working on getting the animation right when they're wearing the equipment. I'm gonna delete all that work. And it's really hard to decide to do this, especially if you're not like an established studio. If you're just one person making all your own decisions, it feels like a personal failure to have to undo hours and hours and hours of work. But it's the right thing, and getting rid of it is going to result in a sort of tighter game, a cleaner game, and it's going to be a lot easier to work with and maintain because I'm not going to have all these extra features that are not really adding anything to the gameplay. The first step is actually removing the character object from all the scenes that it's in and making sure it still compiles and runs, which honestly, the fact that I think I'll be able to do this pretty easily is a good indicator that it was unnecessary from the beginning. But that's the task. We're going to go through. I'm hoping that this process doesn't take me more than a week. But by the end of the week, I think what we're going to have is a much tidier code base. And I get to delete code, which is one of my favorite things to do. I love cleaning up code and just removing entire swaths of it. Maybe that sounds weird, but it's extremely satisfying. One of the first things I did was an important step. Whenever you're deleting code, make sure that you have a backup of that code. Just in case, you never know if it's going to be gone forever, if you might want to reference it again. If you're using source control, which you should be, definitely always use source control. You could access it that way, but it was easier for me to just pull all the player-related files into one folder and export them into a Unity package. That way, if I ever need it again in a Unity game, I can just drag it in. A little foreshadowing there for you in a Unity game. But once I did that, I started deleting player-related objects in my scene, player-specific files in the project folder, and as I went through and deleted these things, very slowly just cleaning up the errors, removing references to player objects. I had some things like the player equipment was assigned in each scene. It was loaded from a save file, so it didn't need to be in any of those places anymore, so just delete, delete, delete. And eventually I had cleared up all the problems and was able to run the game. I thought for sure I had explained all of this next bit to the camera somewhere, but I can't find any footage, so I'm just gonna do it again. The whole process of removing the player took me about 1 hour. I did it on my lunch break. It was incredibly fast, and I just thought it was funny because I thought it would be this whole thing, this whole dramatic thing, you know, taking the player out of the game, and it ended up being nothing. Just a lunchtime dev session, fixing something that should have been fixed. So, since doing one thing for an hour is not much of a devlog, I started back in on smoothing out the core gameplay. Specifically, my unit behaviors have been a little bit unpredictable. I never really balanced them out. I never really made them work in a game. Like, they functioned, but the gameplay and the strategy wasn't really working the way it was supposed to. So I spent some time writing out what I thought the relative strengths of each critter should be, what their moves should do. When I added the traits, I also thinned down so that each unit just has one skill and then a basic attack, just to keep things simple. I did some math to figure out, with all these different strength values and defense values, how does the AI system figure out what they should do and make sure the results from that are what I want and that they're predictable from a player's perspective. I also fixed a bug where the healing units would incorrectly count themselves as allies, and they would sort of run away and also try to get closer to their allies, which was themselves, so they would never attack anything. I fixed that bug, and I was also able to narrow down a bug that I have been seeing for a while but not consistently. It turns out if a unit moves across the middle of the board, the pathfinding breaks and they just move directly to their destination, which I have been seeing for a while, but it didn't happen every single time, because usually just by habit I put my units near the middle so they don't have to walk across the middle most of the time. So I've been seeing it, but I never knew why it was happening or how to make it happen so I could fix it. Now that I can fix it. I'm checking in for the devlog, and I'll just say right now, I got a lot of really good work done earlier this week, but the past 3 or 4 days, yeah, probably four days, I've just been consumed by sticker shop prep, which, is this what I should be focusing all my energy on? Maybe not, but I fell down this deep rabbit hole of figuring out international shipping and tax and customs. So I've just been grinding my brain to figure out the best solution for this. And for some reason, whenever I try to think about international taxes and sales tax, my brain just melts. I don't know what it is. I don't know why it's all so complicated. But I am not equipped to handle this. So I've been working through all of this knowledge, trying to learn how to do things. And I haven't been doing any game work, but I think I might be able to settle in for some development today. I'm currently in the middle of fixing some of the AI behaviors in preparation for adding more units. So I only have, I technically have 5 character units. One is not in the game yet, the bear, that I made a YouTube video series about, but the other 4 have had just little things that don't quite go right. I'm currently in the midst of solving a navigation issue, which I've narrowed down to my hex grid pathfinding. So I've been trying to step through that, figure out where the problem is. I haven't quite found it yet, but I think I'm close, and so I'm hoping if I can just stop thinking about shipping for a second, I can do a little bit of dev work today. So that is the plan. It is Sunday, by the way, mid-September. Good Lord. September 10th. How is it September 10th? Don't think about that. But it's currently about noon. I'm gonna feed the cats, run the dog out, get some lunch together, and then I'm gonna settle in for just a little bit of game work to get my brain back in the headspace of development and thinking about my game instead of thinking about mailing stickers. I was feeling really good about the direction and the progress of my game. I felt like I was starting to really polish it up into a game that I could add like more units to and call it done. And then Unity dropped their big news. Okay, I'm doing a little check-in for my devlog, and I'm not going to go too deep into the details of this because by the time this video comes out, I think people will have kind of rehashed this again and again. I've already kind of rehashed this like on stream and in Discord because it affects me and it's big news. But a couple days ago, Unity announced their new revenue plan, which is bad. Pretty much every way you spin it, it's bad. It's not good for developers. It's not good for Unity because we're already seeing a bunch of big games saying we're just not going to use Unity now because of this. But basically the gist is once you hit the monetization threshold, which I believe is $200,000 of revenue at this point, every install of your game above 200,000 costs 20 cents to the developer. The developer has to pay 20 cents every time someone does a fresh install of a game that they've purchased or potentially that they have not purchased, whether that's because it's like a free game or because it is a pirated version of a paid game. And just the Q&A that's been happening between people who are understandably upset and Unity about like, how does this make sense? They're just not good. So they're kind of hinting at this vague process of like, we'll work with developers who experience like high levels of piracy, and it's very vague, it's not specific. The way that they calculate the install number is handled entirely by their software, and nobody has any insight into how it works or potentially how it could be flawed. And then, like I mentioned, someone else actually brought this up in my Discord, Smokey, but like freemium games whose entire game model is based on a huge number of installs in the hopes that it will sort of funnel down into some sales in the game. So like if for example a company makes $200,000 in sales, just barely getting that minimum amount to count for Unity's new revenue scheme, but they've got 1 million installs, which is 5 times that amount. Not unusual for like a free Android game to get a lot of installs. That's their entire revenue going straight to Unity at that point. It just doesn't make sense, and it doesn't fit with the spirit of Unity being an indie-friendly engine, because it's just not like the developer has no control over this. Like, you can control if it's up for sale, you can control if you continue selling it, you can control how much it sells for in the case of like a revenue share, but what you can't control is after a person has acquired a game, whether it's through legal means or otherwise, you can't control how many different devices they install it on or how many times they uninstall completely and reinstall. You just can't. So it takes this fee and it puts it in the hands of someone who isn't impacted by it, and that doesn't make any sense. So it's just a bad thing, and I've been having a lot of like complicated emotions because my game, as you've seen, I've been working on this game in Unity for 3 years. I've used Unity for other games for 10 years. I'm pretty solidly bought in to the Unity ecosystem, but I don't know. I can't stick with a product that's gonna be just sort of disregarding the reality of how their decisions are impacting their customers, right? I don't know what to do. The bright side is there are other game engines available now. They're not quite as mature as Unity, but they do exist, and they do also support C#. So there is the potential that I can take all the code in my game that is not tied to the engine, which I have tried to keep it separate. Keeping those things separate is just a good practice, and I've done that with as much of my game as I can. So while it would be an enormous undertaking, I could start porting my game to something else. Stride is one, Godot is another one. I almost certainly won't go for Unreal, just because I just don't like the revenue sharing. It is the limit for revenue sharing is extremely high, and it also is more reasonable than this install fee. You know, if I had to compare the two, I would take the revenue sharing, but I'll probably try to go with something open source just to, you know, reduce the chance that something like this is going to happen again, especially with the same project. But right now, I will just say I'm pretty disappointed in you, Unity. Pretty disappointed, but I can only hope that with the, you know, the outcry of many other developers, that they will say, maybe we'll reassess this this decision, because it doesn't seem like it's good for our customers or for our business. But I think for now, actually, I'm gonna end the vlog. I'm gonna put this out like it is. I did do some work before we got to this point. I removed the player from my game completely. And it's actually hilarious how easy it was to do. It really shows just how unnecessary a player avatar was for the game that I'm making. And I'm gonna try to learn from that experience and really think about what features that I'm gonna put effort into are actually offering to the player, because I think especially with such a long-term project, it changes its goal a little bit as it goes. It changes how it accomplishes things, and I really need to reassess everything I'm doing so that I don't waste, you know, dozens and dozens of hours on something that I'm gonna delete later. That's the ideal situation, is that I just make something right from the beginning. Alas, that doesn't really work all that well, but I can try, and I can keep making steps to get closer to that ideal situation. But for now, thank you so much for watching. I think we're gonna see some big changes in the future, if things go the way I expect them to. So just keep in touch, subscribe. I'll get another video out soon. But this is where we're gonna leave this particular episode, and a little bit of a cliffhanger. And tune in next time to see how I deal with the bombshell that was dropped on us this week. Alright, but I'll be back soon with another video regardless. Probably won't be a dev vlog for a little bit, but I hope to see you there. Bye bye.